Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this life group session. I am glad that you decided to take some time and invest both in community and really into diving into some concepts together as a group. And so here's our hope for you. Number one, I hope you make some great relationships. That this group, you would have some people that you see at church, that you consider friends, that you talk to. That's what we hope happens. And so that's one of our goals. Doesn't always happen the first time you go through a group, but we'd love to see that happen. Number two, we'd love to see you really wrestle with these concepts. We're drawing heavily from this book, Faithfully Different by Natasha Crane, and it's one of the most easy to understand, simple introductions to understanding the air we breathe in our culture as well as a biblical Christian worldview. You don't have to read the book, but if you want to go deeper on these concepts, pick one up, pick up the audiobook or pick up a copy at church, and we'd love to have you go a little bit deeper. Throughout this video, we're going to have some discussions, some teaching times. We're going to show you some interview clips of the author of this book, and then we're going to have some questions pop up with scripture references. As a group, look up, read those scripture references, and then take some time. We'll have a timer up there for you. Take some time to discuss those. I encourage you, if you need a little more time, it's okay to pause, but I encourage you to keep moving so that you can be sure to leave some time at the end for prayer. Prayer is such an important part. For me, we've seen God move powerfully in groups through just praying for each other. So be sure to leave some time for that at the end. And thanks for being part of this. Let's get going with the teaching.
Hey guys, I'm glad you've joined us these past 5 weeks. I hope that throughout these discussions and time for fellowship, that you've created some lasting new friendships and deepened existing ones. Now, this is the last week of our Fall Life Group series, and to conclude the series, we're going to go over the fourth and final pillar of a secular worldview from Natasha Crane's Faithfully Different. That pillar is the belief that God is the ultimate guess. There's a lot packed into that idea. But essentially, according to Natasha Crane, God is a guess in the sense that there's no good reason to believe that he exists. And I'll say that again. God is a guess in the sense that there's no good reason to believe he exists. In fact, according to a secular worldview, there's probably more reason to believe that he doesn't exist than that he does. Now, I'm willing to bet, whether you're aware of it or not, you've heard or seen this idea before. See, based on this assumption, people tend towards one of two options. The first is that they see religions as essentially harmless and all leading to kind of the same place. And so then all religions are equally valid, but unnecessary. And then on the other hand, they think religions, especially Christianity, are old-fashioned, intolerant, and dangerous. Regardless of which way the culture leans, both sides would agree that there is no God and that we couldn't know even if there was. And to support its belief, secular culture claims that we don't need religion because we have science, that now we can use reason and so we don't need faith. Okay, so as you know, we as Christians are a vast minority in our culture by having a biblical worldview. That means that the outside pressure pushing on our faith, telling us that we are backwards or intolerant or just plain dumb for having faith in Jesus is serious, and we all feel the impact of it. Maybe this reminds you of that deconversion video you saw on social media of a former Christian talking about how much better off they are now that they left the faith. Or you're remembering the argument that atheist was making, dismantling the reliability of the Bible. However you've seen it, if you're like me, I'm guessing that when you see or hear those things, that actually it stirs a little bit of anxiety in you. Makes you wonder, what if they have a point? What if I'm wrong? What if my faith is unfounded? And so today I want to talk about how we can fight back against those anxieties and doubts, about how it is possible for us to feel confident in our faith when secular culture says it's crazy. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about what it's like to live in a culture that refuses to believe in God. And so I've got a couple questions here for you guys to talk through, and then we'll come back. Hey, welcome back. I hope so far that you can see that you aren't alone in feeling the weight of a secular worldview. Now, if we want to hold firm against that worldview, we have to understand that a secular worldview is based on an assumption that's false. That assumption is that faith and reason cannot go together, that they're opposites and opposed to one another. In my own experience, when I felt that anxiety or doubt creep in, I've worried that if I looked into it, maybe my faith's going to be proven wrong. Maybe it won't really stand up. But the reality is, and the amazing news for us, is that our reason and our faith actually can work together. A biblical worldview would say that truth and logic rest with God. And so to demonstrate that, I'm going to walk us quickly through 3 arguments for the existence of God. First is the cosmological argument. This one can be summarized in 3 statements. First, the universe began to exist. Second, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Third, therefore, the universe had to have a cause. Now, mainstream science actually agrees with this, but they believe that the solution is the Big Bang. The problem with the Big Bang is, what actually caused that? Did the Big Bang appear out of nowhere? In other words, did nothing cause something? Well, that just doesn't make much sense. So then, whatever created time and space has to exist outside of those things. And fortunately for us, God is eternal. He doesn't have a cause, he has always existed, and he will always exist. Okay, the second argument is the argument of intelligent design. Essentially, the fact that nature is so complex and specific indicates that it was designed to be that way. In other words, it didn't happen by chance. One example of this is the distance of our planet from the sun. If we were any closer, the world would be too hot and water would evaporate. And if we were any further away from the sun, then the water would all be ice instead. Either way, we wouldn't be able to survive. Now, Natasha Crane writes that astrophysicist Hugh Ross has cataloged more than 150 of these parameters for us being able to live, and he determined that there is less than 1 chance in 10 to the 232nd power that even one life-supporting planet would exist. For reference, the chances of being struck by lightning are 1 chance in 10 to the 7 power. Atheists would call this luck or an accident. We think it's more likely to be God. And then the third and final argument is the morality argument. It's made up of 2 statements this time. First, objective moral standards, or you could call it a moral law, exists outside of personal opinion. And number 2, the best explanation for that moral law is the existence of a moral law giver. Natasha Crane says that we all have a moral intuition that tells us certain things are wrong regardless of one's personal opinions. For example, rape or torture. But if the universe is all that exists, if we are here by accident and there is no moral lawgiver, then morality could only come from personal opinion. That would mean that if a person or society decides for themselves that murder is acceptable, then it is acceptable. In order for murder to always be wrong, no matter what, we need an objective lawgiver, and that is God. All right, so those are very brief explanations, but the point for now is that faith and reason can go together. That actually, when we stop and think about it, it does seem like reality points to the existence of a God. And so believing in the God of the Bible is logical and reasonable. Now, I know that was a ton of information, so let's pause for some discussion, and then we'll come back one more time to wrap things up. All right, welcome back. Hopefully that discussion helped you slow down a little bit and think through those arguments. Now, I know that there are a lot more questions to be answered when we are talking about the Bible and God and Christianity in general. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have plenty of other doubts or questions that I didn't get to. I know that I do. So, what do we actually do about it? Well, if we want to move past our doubts, the solution isn't to bury those doubts out of fear, it's to explore them. And so it's worth acknowledging a difficult truth at this point. I think that a lot of us, including myself, can be kind of lazy with our doubts and with understanding our faith in general. Did you know, for example, that Christians living in Rome in 200 AD had to go through 3 years of schooling once a week outside of their weekly church meetings before they could get baptized? That's 144 hours of lectures. And Natasha Crane explains that those Christians had to put in the time to deeply understand their faith if they were going to persevere through great hardships. They needed to understand why Christ was literally worth being persecuted for. We, on the other hand, have lived in a culture that, while not exactly warm towards us, has generally accepted and allowed us to believe what we believe. And so because of that, because our culture is also so feelings-led, I think that if we aren't careful, our faith can be based on little more than feelings. Now, I want to leave us with this quote from Natasha Crane. Let me be blunt. If Christianity is true, there are eternal implications for what you believe. Could anything be a greater priority than resolving in your heart and mind whether your faith is well placed in Jesus? If you have the questions, be willing to put in the work needed to find the answers. And if you're worried about what you will find, she also tells us that if you're searching for answers, be thorough. If Christianity is true, there is no need to fear what you will find by investigating. And so let this be a challenge for you. Dig into your faith, because right now is an opportunity to begin wrestling with and exploring the truths that serve as a foundation for our faith in Jesus. All right, that's all we have. So we've provided just a couple more discussion questions for you guys to talk about as a group. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this challenging but hopefully rewarding series, and we're excited to see you this weekend.
Hey, I hope you had a great discussion together. And now we really wanted to make sure we left time to pray together. And I hope you did, because we've seen these times of prayer be so powerful in life groups, personally, on some big deal things we were going through over the years, and in other people's lives as well. And God just answers. Prayer is powerful. It's effective. So I want to encourage you a couple things around prayer. Go around the room, and each person that has a prayer request, share a prayer request. Um, Maybe something you're struggling with personally, maybe something else that's just in your life, and or someone else. That's fine, but try to make it something personal to you. And I encourage you to be vulnerable to share it. These are times when we've really seen God move. Feel free as you go around. Try not to take too long. You don't have to tell your life story. Just take a minute or two and share the requests and some of the context around it. And make sure we leave time for everyone. And then have someone write it down, maybe on a phone note, or just write it down. And then text that out to your group chat at the life group so you can remember throughout the week and be praying for it. Then take a moment and right before you pray, make sure that somebody reads off the requests and at least one person prays for each of the requests in the room as you go around. And don't pray long prayers. We don't have time in this moment for real long prayers. So keep the prayer short. You don't have to be eloquent. The whole point of it is bringing your heart before the Lord. And so pray for each other during this time, and let that be the way to close out the group. And then also remember each other in prayer throughout the week. Thanks for participating. I'm excited to see what God does through these weeks together.